Welcome, folks, to Crypto News Global. I'm your host, Nick Toka. On today's show, the global M2 money supply versus Bitcoin shows bullishness as analysts set to blast off. Here's the date. Also, gold-backed stablecoins will outcompete USD stablecoins, says the High Priest Max Keiser. And Bitcoin race intensifies as Pompliano, Saylor address urgency for a reserve. All this and so much more, we're definitely going to go through in depth on the M2 money supply. We're going to get in depth on where the biddy is going to go and when it's going to get there. All this on today's show and so much more. Welcome, folks, to Crypto News Global. I'm your host, Nick Toka. Today is March 22nd, 2025, and Bitcoin's going a bit sideways, but not for long. We've got some big directions, and the things I've been talking about the past week or so, really months, but in depth the past week. We have some of the real pros, the real big analysts are coming out and now talking about the exact same thing with the M2 global money supply that's going to start pumping up big. Lots of printing going on, and with that, we're also going to see the biddy flying. So let's get right into some analysis of that, and we'll get into our standard Market Watch Bitcoin technical analysis as well. Let's blast off like the biddy. So here we have the very important ISM manufacturing chart. And if we go into kind of a 1 year, we see we're dipping here, but very soon this is going to go skyward, and this is kind of where we're expecting to get to about 60, 65. Right now we're just about 50. This is the manufacturing. This is what Trump is trying to really get pushed up, bring a lot of manufacturing back home and push this so it goes way up into the right, and it definitely will happen. He's pretty committed to this. Now, the M2 money supply. So here we have the money supply. If we go into a 1 year chart, a continuous about 45-degree angle. But when we look at the 2020 area, pretty much bang on right in COVID when everybody was, government was giving out money and everybody was sitting at home. You see this is way up here, and we're going to start to see another huge jump up and to the right here. We have Europe, who's already said they're going to be printing $1 trillion. We have China, who needs to print a heck of a lot of money because they're in the brink. Their real estate markets crashed. Their interest rates they had to bring down to the lowest they've ever been, 1%. And there's no lower they can actually go. So the only possible thing they can do is print more money to service their current debt. So that's what's going to happen down in China. And then the other big economy in the U.S., they're going to be printing money also to fulfill their initiative of bringing all the manufacturing back into the U.S. It's going to cost a lot of money to do it. It will be a big win once it gets done, but until then, they have to spend a crap load of money. So speaking of a crap load of money, let's also check the all-time money supply over here. And as I've said before, in 1966, the U.S. owed $320,000. That was their debt. and now it's 36.5 trillion, which we go through all the time, and we'll go through the exact number in a few minutes. Let's get right into Bitcoin technical analysis. We see the biddy up a bit. It's really been about sideways all day Saturday at 85,215, up about 0.5% right now. Ethereum up 1.5%, $2,000. Solana $131, up 1.5%. XRP flat at $2.40. Doge up 0.25%, just under 17 cents. Going into the crypto bubbles so we can get a better visual on the day, we've got pretty much about a 50-50 mix. The biggest movers are up about 8%. The biggest losers are down about 8%. So not much happening. One of those sideways Saturdays, really. And zooming out to the weekly, again, we have about a 50-50 mix with Pancake Swap leading the way up 40%. Pi down 32%, as well as Jasmy down 17%. Jasmy is it's been dubbed the Japanese Bitcoin, but way down for the week there. And zooming out to the monthly, we have Pi, which shows up 55%, but it's been dumping recently. And almost 95% in the red for the month. Moving into our crypto market cap, we have Bitcoin at $1.67 trillion right now. Ethereum $240 billion. XRP $138 billion. Solana $66 billion. Cardano $25 billion. Doge $24.9 billion. Tron $22 billion. The total market cap is $2.72 trillion, with Bitcoin holding 61.43% of that. Ethereum 8.8% of the market cap. They just keep dropping. XRP at 5%. It's 5.09. If Ethereum doesn't watch out, XRP is going to flip them one day soon. We are at a 30 in fear in our crypto fear and greed index. Yesterday was a 32, and last week a 30, also in fear. There's approximately 1,117 days left until the next Bitcoin halving in 2028, with 160,984 blocks left to mine until that time. Getting into the total top assets by market cap. Globally, gold still way up top, far beyond everybody else at 20 trillion, 300 billion. Apple, is next in line at 3 trillion. Microsoft 2.9 trillion, Nvidia 2.8 trillion, Amazon 2 trillion, and Google 2 trillion. Silver 1.8 trillion. Bitcoin number 8 at 1.668 trillion. Saudi Aramco 1.658 trillion. So just 100 million behind, actually 50 million behind Bitcoin. Facebook $1.5 trillion, and you can currently get 1,187 satoshis for one fiat US dollar. And back to the fiat currency, we have the US national debt currently at 36,630 billion. That equals to 107,136 per U.S. citizen, or 323,048 per U.S. taxpayer. So big bucks owed. We already went through the money supply and what's going to be happening both in the States and globally. They are going to start printing that shit like mad, and once that happens, everything's devalued, folks. So if they print, if there's twice as much fiat currency as there is today, for example, then technically Bitcoin's price should double, right? Because it's the same. Bitcoin's not going to change because the supply is static, whereas if there's twice as much fiat currency, technically Bitcoin should be worth twice as much. So once we see a lot of money printing, and once we see that manufacturing go up, the ISM and the M2, we are going to see definitely Bitcoin follow. And once the global M2 goes up, as per some real professionals here, we are ready for a blast off date. So let's get right into our story. Global M2 versus Bitcoin shows bullishness as Analyst sets blast off date. Here's when. A recent analysis comparing Bitcoin's price movement and the global M2 money supply has added another data point to the growing argument for a bullish phase ahead for cryptocurrency. Colin, a crypto analyst known on social media platform X as the M2 guy, recently shared an update suggesting that Bitcoin may be on the verge of a significant upward move, and the expected timeline might continue to test the patience of Bitcoin traders. A Bitcoin incoming rally may mirror M2's explosive growth. Colin, a crypto analyst known as on X as the M2 guy, has continued to build his case around the correlation between Bitcoin and macro liquidity trends. His outlook on Bitcoin, which is currently bullish, is based on an offset correlation between the cryptocurrency's price action and on the daily candlestick chart and the global M2 money supply. In a previous analysis, the analyst noted that Bitcoin's price action on a daily candlestick chart has the best correlations on a 70-day and 107-day offsets. The most recent update from the analyst focused on the 107-day offset, which he termed the most likely scenario. Here's the chart. Global M2 money supply offset by 107 days. BTC. Right. I mean, that's what I've been saying too. 107 days, 3 months. That's exactly bang on. Analysts of Bitcoin's 107-day offset with the global M2 money supply shows that Bitcoin is about to go on a blast-off spike. However, this isn't just about a one-day spike. Colin projects the rally could last for 2 months based on the sharp vertical trend of global M2 money supply. Yeah, the printer's going to turn on, and it's not going to turn off for a long time, folks. As for the timing, the 107-day offset suggested the blast-off spike is expected to kick off around April 30th based on a mathematically strong correlation. If the M2 line continues its upward surge, the rally could last even longer. So, April, where's the date that he's suggesting again? April 30th. April 30th it is. I could go along with that. So the money supply here spikes, and the Bitcoin kind of spikes. This is the head and shoulder pattern we've been talking about. So the spike was really along with the M2 money supply. The Bitcoin then dips as the M2 money supply also dipped, and now we're seeing a huge run up in more money printing. Focus on the macro, not just the day. I've been saying that, guys, all the time. Although April 30th is the focal point of his projection, Colin cautioned followers not to become overly fixated on that date. Don't get caught up in the weeds, he advised. The larger narrative is more important, reflected in the soaring global M2 levels, which should create an environment right for Bitcoin and other crypto assets to benefit from increased liquidity. Yeah, exactly. He points out other crypto assets as well. So, alt season is coming, folks. In terms of a price target, the current trajectory of the global empty money supply points to a rally above 140,000. However, interesting predictions have suggested that the Bitcoin price has a chance of a doubling before the end of 2025. I also feel like it's going to double, more than double from this point. At the time of writing, Bitcoin is trading at 84,000, having spent the last 24 hours trading at a range of 83.7 and 84.3. Yeah, kind of sideways. Based on this analysis, the correlation with the global M2 money supply, bullish Bitcoin investors might need to wait for at least another month before any significant movement. This delay might pose challenges for short-term traders depending on their positioning and risk tolerance. On the other hand, it gives long-term holders the opportunity to accumulate more Bitcoin at the current low price before the predicted rally. Yeah, it's definitely still time to accumulate, still time to buy the dip. I haven't stopped buying the dip when I've got extra cash. And I've been buying Bitcoin, I've been buying Solana, I've been buying Algorand, Injective. Yeah, so Graphane, which is the AI platform that really all the AI coins are going to start to use. So, and it's way down, Graphane. It's peaked at 65 cents, I think, and now it's at 3.5 or 4 cents. So, I mean, if the price gets back to that, or should I say when the price gets back to that, you know, we're talking a 15x, whatever the math is on that. You know, it's a lot. 64 divided by, we'll call it 4, it's a 16x. So, and if it goes, you know, parabolic from there, it could be a 30x, a 50x, a good chunk of change. Now, Graphane is one of those things where I keep saying that, you know, your big chunk of money should stay in the big guys, the big players, the Bitcoin, the Solana, the XRP, you know, the Apple, the Nvidia, the Microsoft, the Amazon. But 5%, take it and play the fuck with it, you know, because these are sometimes the coins and the investments that end up making you the most. Now, do you go into it all out and with your 95% and lose your shirt? Definitely not. But it's always a good idea to take a few percent. You know, I always say 5% is a good percentage because even if you lose it all, it's not going to really affect you that much ultimately in the grand scheme of things. So take a bit of money, play with it, but only a small fraction. The bigger amounts, you know, if someone told you you're going to make 100 or 200% on Bitcoin or Solana or XRP, you would take it, right? You'd be happy. So think of it that way. And if you happen to make 15, 20% on some little shit coin, bonus. Now, Max Keiser, our friend Max, whenever he speaks, I like to listen. And this time he's talking about gold-backed stablecoins, how they're going to outcompete US dollar stablecoins. And that sounds pretty accurate to me. Gold has been accepted as money for thousands of years and does not suffer from geopolitical or inflationary risks, unlike fiat currency. Gold-backed stablecoins will compete US dollar-pegged alternatives worldwide due to gold's inflation hedging properties and minimum volatility, according to Bitcoin maximalist Max Keiser. Keiser argued that gold is more trusted than the US dollar globally and said governments of foreign nations with an adversarial relationship to the United States would not accept dollar-pegged stablecoins. The BTC maximalist added, Russia, China, and Iran are not going to accept a US dollar stablecoin. I predict they will counter the US stablecoin with a gold one. China and Russia have a combined 50,000 tons of gold, more than what is reported. The potential for gold-backed stablecoins to outcompete dollar-pegged tokens in international markets would upend plans to extend U.S. dollar dominance through stablecoins proposed by the lawmakers. A stablecoin, this is a tweet from Max Keiser, a stablecoin backed by backed by gold would outcompete a US dollar-backed stablecoin on world markets. Russia, China, Iran should take note. It would track inflation, the US dollar does not. You're guaranteed to lose purchasing power. The US dollar has no volatility, but again, you are guaranteed to lose purchasing power. Bitcoin's definitely deflationary, but volatile. Gold tracks inflation and is minimally volatile. Why wouldn't Russia, China, Saudis, Iran do this? Gold-backed stablecoins fulfill the original promise of USD. Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, they were backed by, the US dollar was backed by gold until 1971. So, we went off the gold standard at that point. So, stablecoin issuer Tether launched a gold-backed stablecoin called Alloy, a USD backed by Tether's XAU, a token that provides a paper claim to physical gold in June 2024. According to Pointville founder and former Van Eck executive Gabor Gurbax, Tether Gold is what the dollar used before 1971. XAU, which is the symbol for gold, is up 15.7 year to date, while the broad crypto market is in the red. Foundations and businesses should hedge their holdings with XAU, the executive wrote on a March 19th post. U.S. policies, however, have a different idea. The U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said that the Trump administration would focus on using dollar-pegged stablecoins to protect the dollar's reserve currency status and ensure U.S. dollar homogeny in global financial markets. Speaking at the March 7th White House Crypto Summit, Bennett indicated that the stablecoin regime would be a top priority for the admin. So we see where he's going with that. I don't disagree. Any fiat currency, nothing against the US dollar, any fiat currency is now, not just now, it's been tumbling since the time it was printed. So, I mean, here's that XAUT-US dollar. So since its launch, it looks like since January, it's up 15%, right? So you can't lie with the facts. They're right here. So on the other hand, a US dollar backed, it's always going to show 1-to-1, but will it actually show that the dollar, the only way you're going to be able to track the US-backed stablecoin would be against something like gold or something like Bitcoin. So predictably, it's going to be the opposite direction. If you put a chart of Bitcoin beside a chart of a US stablecoin, you're going to see this kind of motion, a top left to bottom right, because as there's more money printed, the Bitcoin or the gold won't lose its value, but the fiat money will lose its value. So it's going to be, top left to bottom right, which is really the opposite of any kind of chart. You don't want to see that in a normal chart. You want to see from bottom left to top right. The Bitcoin race also intensifies as Pompliano, Saylor address urgency for more reserve. On March 20th, investor and entrepreneur Anthony Pompliano stated on Fox News, "There's a global race going on. Russia, Abu Dhabi, El Salvador, Bhutan all these other countries are trying to buy Bitcoin. The same way that there was a space race, there's now a Bitcoin race. The idea of a Bitcoin race is now a reality as world leaders actively discuss the urgency of either establishing digital asset reserves or embracing cryptocurrency as legal tender. El Salvador in 2021 became the first country to make a Bitcoin legal tender, purchasing over 2,000 Bitcoin as a part of its national reserve to foster financial inclusion and economic growth. The move has been both celebrated and criticized due to Bitcoin's volatility. Similarly, in 2022, the Central African Republic became the second country to adopt Bitcoin, viewing the cryptocurrency as a tool to improve economic development and financial inclusion in one of the world's least developed nations. Both countries' actions reflect a growing interest in Bitcoin as an alternative financial strategy. It's hard capped at 21 million, and in 10 years, most of it will be mined. The theory is that the countries considering Bitcoin a valuable reserve asset will strive to establish as much ownership of the total Bitcoin supply as possible. Proponents believe scarcity and growing demand will drive Bitcoin's value, making large Bitcoin holders influential. What does Saylor say? One of the most prominent Bitcoin evangelists, Michael Saylor, said that 78% of the U.S. was bought for $40 million at some point. The former CEO of MicroStrategy referred to various land acquisitions, such as the Louisiana purchase of 1803, to illustrate why the U.S. government should buy Bitcoin now when it's cheap. In a recent speech, Saylor called next decade a digital gold rush and compared Bitcoin to the Manhattan Project, dubbing it digital energy. Today, Bitcoin represents the digital capital network controlling 99% of power within the cryptocurrency ecosystem. He said the U.S. government recognizes only Bitcoin as a legitimate digital capital. To secure the future of cyberspace and maintain global financial dominance, America must adopt a Bitcoin strategy. Only Bitcoin and U.S. treasuries have the liquidity and global trust required to serve as reliable reserve assets worldwide. No wonder Saylor has been vocally supportive of the government officials pushing the increase of U.S. BTC stockpile. President Trump, Republican Senator Cynthia Lummis, and Bo Hines, the executive director of the President's Council of Advisors on Digital Assets, have all expressed a desire to increase the Bitcoin U.S. reserve. Like Saylor, Pompliano, among the most vocal crypto advocates in the U.S., considers the Trump administration's focus on Bitcoin dominance important. Speaking about the future price of Bitcoin, Pompliano said during a Fox News appearance that he doesn't know when BTC will hit 1 million. However, he is seemingly confident that, like gold, its value will increase from where it currently is today. That last check, Bitcoin is just above, it's currently at 85,000 from what we saw, 85.3. So the big players, the whales, the smart money, they're all talking Bitcoin. They're all talking about put your money into Bitcoin. It will hit $1 million. You know, other analysts are talking about the M2 money supply, which we talk a lot about here, and how that is going to dictate where the price of Bitcoin goes. And I definitely agree with that, along with the manufacturing ISM. So very shortly, we're going to see this thing pump the way everybody's talking about how it should be pumping and what everybody's been looking forward to. I feel, 90% confident about that. So personally, I'm using this opportunity to buy the dip, and I'm not waiting until the price goes up and say, oh shit, I should have bought more, or oh, I should have bought some, or, I'm not going to live in regret thinking I should have, I could have, why didn't I? And the hindsight 2020 thing. Well, I'm not putting my life savings in it, but I'm putting, whatever I can, a fair portion, because there's going to be a larger proportional increase than there would be in both, either leaving it in fiat cash or even in the stock market. You're not going to be making these potentially hundreds of percents in the stock market, folks. And if in fiat money in the bank, your money's actually losing its buying power. So speaking of buying power, speaking of money, money is abundant. Money is everywhere. There is $900 trillion of assets in the world, folks. It's time that's scarce, so spend your time wisely. And in terms of assets, if you start saving money now, you should be able to retire early. If you start making more money now, if you're young, you should start saving more money and not spending more money. If you start saving when you're in your teens or in your 20s, you should be able to retire when you're 40 or 45. If you've got one of these great ideas that everybody seems to have, you need to execute. Even if you're not ready, an idea is nothing until you actually go through the process and execute and go through with it. If you're not ready, it doesn't matter. Start your idea. Things will slowly come together, and you're going to make mistakes along the way, but you'll learn from those mistakes, and things will come together for you. Even if it fails, you'll at least live fulfilled knowing that you tried, rather than being unfulfilled thinking, I had this great idea, but I never even gave it a shot. I here at Crypto News Global want everybody to know that when you're watching the show, you're not only watching, you are the show. I'm on a path to hit 500 to 1,000 subscribers this year. It would be fantastic if you help join me for that ride. So if you found this stream enjoyable, please share, like, comment, and subscribe. And we will see you on the next stream, folks. Thanks so much for joining.